We'll be working on a 10-inch round canvas with acrylic paints. We'll also be using these traceables that you can download from our website for free. Just visit paintingwithred.com or click the link in the description box below. You'll also need a sheet of graphite paper to transfer the image from the traceables to your canvas. You can find graphite paper at your local craft store or by clicking the affiliate link in the description box below. So gather your paints and materials and then follow along with this step-by-step video as I teach you how to paint. Let's get started. Okay guys, so I totally screwed up and I traced the image on before I did the background, which is not what I wanted to do. So I'm going to go ahead and just cover that with some of this light buttermilk and a wide brush, and then you can still see some of the pumpkin coming through. All right, that looks pretty good and even. We're gonna let that dry, or if you have a heat gun, not an air gun. If you have a heat gun, you can dry that really, really quickly, which is probably what I'm going to do. All right, be back in a minute. All right, so the background is dry and I just had to leave it for a few minutes to cool off because I did not want to put the graphite paper on a hot canvas. You never want to do that. So you can still see a little bit where I originally had traced it because of my whole mess up of tracing it before I had put the background color on. Please don't do that. Make sure you cover it in whatever color you want before we trace it. So hopefully I can get this kind of matching up so we don't have it too wonky looking. I'm just taping this down. Remember, graphite paper, shiny side down, stencil over it, some tape, and I'm gonna actually just use the ballpoint pen this time so I can make sure to see exactly where I've already traced. All right, so I'm gonna start in the same corner as last time. Get this leaf and my flower. Okay, I'm gonna do my pumpkin. I was just double checking on the flowers. That's why it's good to also either print out your reference photo or just have it open on your computer or phone or whatever you use so that you can refer back to it. Let's do our little vine. And I think that's it. Because of course we're going to put the thankful words on later. All right, so there it is. And if this is from me like leaning with my hand on it, if you do happen to get a little bit of the graphite paper, or it might have still been a little bit warm there, you can just get a brush and go over it with some more of that cream or whatever background color you're using. This is that buttermilk. All right. Let's set that aside and we'll get started with our painting. So you can see here I've got all my colors on my palette, which is just a basic paper plate. I've got that, let's see, this brightest orange here is the jack-o'-lantern orange. Then next to that is the spiced pumpkin, and then the orange spice, which I forgot to shake that one up, so you can see it's kind of separated with oil. I'll have to like stir that with the brush to blend that in. So don't forget to shake your paints if it's been a while since you've used them or if they're new. The King's Gold is next, and then the chestnut, and then over here we have lime tree and classic green, and that's just my leftover buttermilk from the background. All right, so let's get started with our pumpkin. Grab a brush. Let's go ahead and start with this middle one actually, which was the spice pumpkin. So I'm going to start with that. We're just going to fill in all of our pumpkin. All right, looks like we've gotten all of that covered, and see, it's still very wet. We want that because that's what makes the colors blend. All right, so let's go in with that. It's called Orange Spice, and we are going to go trace over the lines with it, okay? And when you add the different colors, that's what makes the pumpkin really like pop. It makes it three-dimensional. So it doesn't just look like a drawing of a pumpkin. See how it's already starting to stand out? All right, I'm gonna add a little bit more. I like about the bottom because we're thinking about where it's gonna be shaded. So the bottom would be shaded, definitely. And where those lines are at the top, we can go ahead and just add some lines in like that. All right, now I want to switch to a thinner brush. Let me find what I did with that smaller one. Okay, so here is a 3. See, it's it's a round, but it's smaller. I'm gonna go in to this chestnut, and I'm going to wipe off the excess. I want it kind of pointy. And I'm going to go in through those same lines that we just went through. And see, if you notice on the painting, on the picture, they're kind of scratchy. They kind of look like someone scratched the lines through. So we're going to do that. We're going to kind of give it like a rustic kind of it's not a smooth line, it's a little bit scratchy, because this is kind of a rustic looking pumpkin. So kind of just scratch those like little scratches. It's kind of a wrist flicking motion, see? If you notice, it's kind of my hands kind of making a flicking motion. Definitely want to add some brown up here. We want it darkest around the stem. Just flick those out. Gives it some shading there. And then they have it really scratchy around the bottom. Just almost looks like some zigzags they did there. Really scratchy. I'm sorry, I'm very professional. Telling you to scratch with your brush. But that's what it looks like. All right, now we need to go in with some of our kind of highlight color. So I'm going to set that brush aside. I'm going to give us a quick rinse of this one. So I just kind of swish it through my cup of water. It does not have to be perfectly clean because it's still going to pick up some of that. We're going to go into the lighter orange, and I'm just going to use an old rag and kind of just wipe off any excess. This is just an old paint rag I use to kind of wipe it off. All right, now we're gonna go into this, what is this called? Jack-o'-lantern. All right, and this is the brightest orange. We're gonna start doing some like highlight color, all right? So we're gonna think, where is the light hitting on our pumpkin? So you can see the light's gonna be hitting here. Less on this side. So usually when you make a painting, you gotta imagine there's either some kind of sort of light source, whether it's the sun or a lamp or something that's hitting whatever you're painting. So they have the light source obviously coming from this side, because look, we've got light, 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 and then less light. So the light source would be on this side. So we're gonna add in our brighter orange. Hopefully it shows up. we are putting this to the meaty part of the, because those other lines we were putting like in the grooves, but this part we're putting in the meatier part. Now you'll notice that I'm picking up some of that darker shade. That's fine because that's blending it. That's making those scratches a little bit more blended into the pumpkin, so they're not harsh lines. All right, so we've added some of that. Now we're gonna go right in with that same dirty brush, grab a little bit of that King's Gold, and we're gonna start adding that right where we said the light source was hitting. So it was hitting all on this side, all on this side, and then it is less and less as you go around the pumpkin. So very little up here. But definitely all right here, definitely on this side. Trying to see how high up it goes. Gonna smooth that out a little bit there. So you see we're getting a highlight over here. And less of a highlight over here. All right, now actually we need some of this buttermilk or this cream or any cream color, even a white if you don't have cream. Even if you didn't do your background white, we're gonna need some of that. All right, so we're gonna pick up some of that buttermilk and we're gonna put in more highlights. So on this side, right here, we have it right there and right there. A little bit less over here. And see how it's getting less and less on your brush? That's okay, we can pick up a little bit more, but brush off the excess. All right, we've got a very round three-dimensional pumpkin now. And see how easy that was? I think that looks pretty good, and actually it looks better than the image because the image still looked very two-dimensional, and look, it looks like we have a very three-dimensional pumpkin. All right, so I think we're done with the pumpkin part. Of course, we got to do the stem and all that. All right, for our stem, I'm going to start with the lime tree, which is that lighter green, and I've got a 0 round. Actually, guys, I'm going to turn this around. I don't want to stick my hand in that wet pumpkin. So I'm going to turn it this way so the stem is closest to me, and I'm just going to kind of, looks like they kind of just scratch some lines on there as well. So you see I'm just doing kind of little short flicks. Now this looks very, very bright, but I think when we add that green, the darker green, it's gonna look much better. Okay, so now I dipped into the darker green, which is just the classic green. And I'm gonna just draw some kind of, again, scratchy little lines through the lighter green. Let me go ahead and get a little bit more of that green, of the darker green, sorry. And now we're gonna start going towards the pumpkin. If it was facing me, I'd be doing my strokes down, but since I have it upside down, I'm going to do little strokes upward towards the pumpkin. And these are just little lines, and it's okay you're picking up that orange because we put a lot of that chestnut there, so that's going to help give it a very realistic looking stem and vine. So see how our brush has some of that chestnut in there. Start going up with it. Because if you ever go to the pumpkin patch, you know that those stems, when you get them, they're usually kind of all rotted brown looking. So bring some of that brown. You can grab some chestnut. I just loaded my brush with a little bit of that chestnut. Okay, now I do think we should add a tiny bit of King's Gold in there maybe. Okay, so where's the light again? Okay, remember the sun or the light source is on this side. So we would have light right here. The light would be shining there. The light would be on this part of the vine. Right here, probably on the tip. Do you hear Little Bear snoring? I'm gonna put a little bit of yellow right there. King's Gold on this side. All right, now I'm gonna add some of that buttermilk. So I dipped in the buttermilk. This gives us more highlights, more natural looking, right there, right there. All right, let's flip that around and take a look. Okay, that is a lot better. And I know that this one is very bright looking, but I like ours very much better. It looks more realistic. Okay, now we are going to go ahead and work on our flowers. So let's start with the top flowers. I'm going to use the number 3 that I had with the chestnut. I'm going to rinse out my brush. Just run it through some water and then wipe off the excess on this little rag. And it looks like, okay, so let's see our flower. There's a lot of red. These flowers have the King's Gold. Let's go ahead and do those. King's Gold. It's easier to cover light with dark than the other way around. So fill those in with some King's Gold. Now, don't accidentally paint this one because this one is a leaf. That's why you always want to look back at your reference photo. See, it can easily be mistaken for a petal, but it's actually a leaf. I'm trying to decide if I've dipped my arm in the paint. All right, so we got those flowers with our base coat. Looks like, let's go ahead and trace around. It looks like a very sloppy like circle around it. So let's just go ahead and do a kind of a sloppy circle around the center. It's not even in line. It's very sloppy. And since the paint underneath is wet, it kind of almost gives it a watercolor look. And this one's using, let's kind of go down the middle lines with this. All right, now I'm gonna go in with our darkest shade of orange and very roughly trace these like it has. All right, I'm gonna go in with that brightest orange, the jack-o'-lantern. I actually think I want to paint inside these because I want it to be different than this one. I'm adding a little bit of the brighter orange in the center. All right, let's go around to the other side. We're gonna paint everything with King's Gold. Well, not everything, but every flower with King's Gold. Okay, I'm not being perfect with these because we are about to go in with the other oranges. So I'm going to go right in with the darkest orange, the orange spice, and do a circle around the center. And then trace the petals. And I'm going to go in with the chestnut and maybe use the chestnut to kind of outline. All right, now let's dip that brush into some King's Gold and give each petal a highlight. All right, let's go to the bottom, same thing. Let's trace those with some brown. All right, so my camera died for a minute, so I'm back. Okay, we're gonna let this dry before we go in and add a little bit more yellow to these. So let's go ahead and move on to these little, I don't even know what those are. Just some, I don't know if they're leaves or nuts or what. But we're gonna go ahead and add, looks like this one here is, I'm using the medium orange. I'm only filling in the bottom. Well, no, I'm filling in the whole thing, and then I'm gonna go over with the highlight. And same thing on this one, just the middle one over here. And then this one is darker, so we're gonna use the darker shade right here. And this one is darker also. Okay, now our highlight, I'm just gonna dip into the buttermilk. And the buttermilk is only on the top where the light would hit it, on this one and this one. Tiny bit over there, tiny bit there. The leaves, let's start with the darkest shade of orange, and we are gonna come out from the stem through the veins. Then they have the lighter orange. This is a leaf, so we wanna, and that's all green. Okay, we're gonna skip that. We're gonna go to the medium orange right here. And over here, this one here, it's kind of a teardrop shape. It stops right there because it's gonna be green. Go into our buttermilk color, kind of highlight that. Same thing here, a little bit of a highlight. And then we use the darker shade for, it's got a little bit of a vein here. Let's go in with some of that buttermilk and whatever is already on the brush. You should probably have picked up some from the highlight earlier, and see these leaves. We're starting off with this light color, and it's picking up the color from the veins, which is fine. All right, let's go in with our medium orange shade, kind of drag that from the center outward. And then let's go into our darkest orange and drag that out as well. All right, we're gonna get a smaller liner brush, like a 0 or a 1. go in with our chestnut and draw in those veins here. All right, I still want to go in and fix these flowers in a minute, but let's go ahead and work with our green while we're waiting for that to dry. So things that are green. Okay, this is green. I'm starting with the dark green. I'm going to do the lower, well no, I'm actually going to do all of it, and then I'll come in with the lighter green as a highlight. And this leaf, what am I going to do? Kind of the outside and the lower half on this one. The outside of this one and the center. All right, let me go ahead and switch to the lighter shade. We're going to put that on the top part like a highlight. See how it blends together. Here we're going to put on the wait, too much. Put on the inside and on the top, and blend them together. As you run the brush, they blend together. All right, let's do the bottom part. Okay, this whole stem should be green actually. Okay, we're just doing that. Same thing over here. All right, then go in with your lighter green. I think that's, oh, up here. Let's flip this around. All right, same thing here. We're gonna start with the darker shade on the bottom. And if you want to put a vein on that large one, go back in with the darker green and just kind of follow it up like that. Same thing here and here. Oh wait, you know what? Let's add a little bit of gold to our leaves. Let's add a little bit of our King's Gold. See how we're running through the veins, the brown veins? Just run right through them with King's Gold, and that's going to look so much better. All right, much better. All right, let's try to lighten the side flowers up with some King's Gold. All right, so that really helped those. Let's do the same thing with those top two. King's Gold. Sometimes you have to just step away and let it dry, because if you keep layering it, the colors just get too muddied. So that's why I kind of moved on and let those dry before coming back to them, because there's a point where the colors are no longer standing out on their own and they're just making one big mud puddle. Since we have that yellow there, I'm going to add the brightest orange to the centers. Same thing here, brightest orange. And I'm going to do the opposite with the center of this one. We're going to add King's Gold to the center. We're also going to add some more King's Gold highlights to just one side of each petal. All right, now we need to add our ribbons. All right, let's swish our brush in some water. Wipe off the excess. I'm using that 3. And let's start with our lightest shade of orange, which is that brightest one. I think I might actually mix a tiny bit of King's Gold with it. So we have like this yellow orange. All right, we're gonna follow the outside ribbon. Let's do the other side. Actually, we could just turn this. Okay, I gotta turn my reference paper to see what I'm doing. It's gonna be the outside, goes inside. All right, now we've got our lightest shade. Let's go in with that darkest shade of orange. Load our brush. And it's okay if your ribbon gets thick and thin and thick and thin. All right, let's do the other side. All right, we did our ribbons. Now guys, we do need to let this dry, or you can use your, if you have a heat gun, you can use your heat gun, because we still got to put our thankful letters on it. But we definitely want it to dry, and we're gonna put it just on the pumpkin. So you can go ahead and step away. All right, guys, the canvas is dry, or at least mostly dry. And I have cut out my thankful stencil here. And then I've also cut my graphite paper to just about this almost same size. And then I've taped it to my canvas. Hopefully it's centered. And now we're just going to take a ballpoint pen and trace it, and try not to put too much pressure on any areas outside so that it doesn't leave black marks on your canvas. So I'm going to start over here with the T. I find it amazing, the people that can freehand, like you see those videos of people just freehand the lettering. That's just so amazing. Okay, I think we got to the end. Let's take a look. All right, can you see it? You may not be able to see it too well in the camera lights, but it is clearly there. I don't have any trouble reading it, and you probably won't either, as long as you use plenty of pressure. Remember, not too much pressure. You don't want to pierce it, but just enough. So I can see it. I'm going to grab black paint. We're going to be using some black paint to fill this in, and a liner brush. So I'll be right back. Okay guys, I zoomed in a little closer so you can see, and I've tilted my canvas at an angle. I'm going to just be using black on a liner brush, and I'm just going to try my best to fill in. I turned it at an angle because I can see one of these flowers, the center is still wet, so I don't want to like drag my hand across it. So, all right. So we're just filling in those lines. I think this font, I'm not sure, but I think this font that I chose is called Bromello. I'm pretty sure that's the one. I think, like, some people find the wording, painting wording, relaxing. I think that's the only part that stresses me out. And of course these flowers kind of stress me out. I feel like I've been holding my breath. Okay, getting down to the last letter. Gotta be careful. Okay, I think I made it. Miss any spots? Got fat on a couple. I think I got fat on the U maybe. There's a little bit of a spot there. Let me turn it sideways so I can get that smooth stroke. Okay, I think that's it. Let's take a look.